Coming at you from Bellingham, Washington. This is Two Nuts in the Sack. I'm Julie.
And I'm Gavin.
And tonight, as we continue down this path of the obscure and unexplained, we are going to have a chat about the power of the mind, ESP, telekinesis, clairvoyance. That's right. Tonight's episode in our series on the paranormal, Chapter 7, Psychics.
Ooh, tonight's show is going to be pretty interesting. But if you're a psychic, you might already know that. It's academically referred to as parapsychological phenomena. The evidence, again, is mostly anecdotal and widely considered a pseudoscience. Whenever a study is released claiming to prove the existence of this phenomena, any attempt to repeat said experiment often fails, not supporting any of the findings of the original studies. A broad generalization to be sure, but there are too many stories beginning with, like, I don't know how I knew X, Y, and Z, I just knew. So that just doesn't wholly discount the psychic phenomena. Much like any of these topics we've covered thus far, there's a rich history of psychics and mediums whom, with their gifts, have shaped history itself. Stories of soothsayers, prophets, fortune tellers, and oracles litter history. Reading tea leaves, bones, and even the stars to gain insight into events past, present, and future. They often become advisors, priests, and judges. From the Bible, King Saul tasked the prophet Samuel with finding his ass. Literally donkeys, but I thought I would use ass just to make you giggle. So
I like it.
Thanks for that. In ancient Egypt, priests of Ra, the sun god, acted as seers for the pharaoh. The Oracle of Delphi is perhaps one of the most notable psychics in history. For centuries, the priestesses maintained the temple of Apollo at Delphi in Greece. The Pythia was the moniker of the high priestess, a name derived from the original name of Delphi, Pytho. The Temple of Delphi was constructed at a site of a historical battle between Apollo and a monstrous python. I guess it would be a mythical battle more than a historical battle, but let's continue. This was said to be the cause of the smell within the temple. It was the rotting corpse, which also comes from the Greek pytho, which means to rot. But I digress. The temple was established in the 8th century BCE. By the end of the 7th century BCE, the Pythian became the most recognized prophetess in the known world up until the 4th century BCE. The Delphic oracle was perceived as the most powerful woman in the classical world. Obviously, this wasn't the same woman. This was passed down by generation to generation.
Right.
Because a 400-year-old woman is just inconceivable.
Inconceivable!
It's still unclear where the visions of the oracle came from, but one explanation with the most scientific backing is that there were hallucinogenic gases seeping from a chasm below the room where the Pythia made her prophecies. Basically, she was huffing natural gases, and in a stoned state was speaking in dactylic hexameters. That's a hard word to pronounce.
Wow.
Words are hard.
Words are hard.
Basically, it's a six-line paragraphs with a poetic flow. Gas inhalation aside, the prophetess made many predictions and prophecies that undoubtedly shaped the history of the known world. The oracle was one of my favorites and one of the most documented psychics in history, and the oldest we're going to talk about today, because each could probably be an episode on their own. So in the interest of time, we'll do our usual glossing over of some of the most famous psychics we came across in this paranormal investigation. Let's do a little back and forth, and I think we each have a deep dive. But I'll kick this one off by talking about Nostradamus.
Ooh.
Yes. Michel de Notre Dame, he was a Frenchie, was an astrologer and reputed seer, best known for his Book of Prophecies, a collection of over 900 quatrains, basically 4-line poems, but 900 quatrains that supposedly predicted future events. The book was first printed in 1555 before his death and is still in print today. Caterina de' Medici became one of his foremost supporters, basically funding the publication of the 1555 Les Prophéties. Again, French, I'm not a big fan of, but Caterina de' Medici, I'd like that, because that's a little Italian. But Les Prophéties was supposedly based on his studies of judicial astrology, which relied on calculation of the paths and stations of planets and celestial bodies in relation to Earth. So, totally astrology. But a work was lauded as predicted many major world events, though largely disputed by modern academics, insisting that because of the vagueness of the poetic quatrains, not to mention terrible translations, the prophecies could be applied to many different situations, especially by staunch believers with little understanding of 16th century France. There was even supposed to be a quatrain or a series of quatrains by Nostradamus that predicted 9/11. But again, it was just a clever fellow who was able to write in the language and make this false prediction. So this one kind of debunked, but still interesting. So, okay, let's leap forward a little bit in time. And I know that this is one of your favorite subjects that we've talked about thus far. I scared the shit out of you with ghosts. You really hated the demons one.
Yes, I did.
But psychics, that's all in your wheelhouse.
Yes.
So
absolutely.
Let's talk about some psychics.
Okay. Starting with John Edward. John Edward is one of the world's most respected mediums. His career has flourished for more than 30 years. As a young child, John's abilities to perceive family history and events he had no reason to know about set him apart. However, this family was accepting and supportive of his gifts, and so he grew up normally. As a teenager...
Mm-hmm.
What?
I said, mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. As a teenager, John Edward encountered Lydia Clare, who set the wheels of his career in motion by predicting the use of his supernatural abilities to help others. Today, John Edward conducts multiple life events a year to connect people in need with their lost loved ones, particularly those who have crossed over. His show, Crossing Over with John Edward, is syndicated worldwide.
See, this is okay. First off, his name is pluralized. It's John Edwards with an S on the end of it.
Oh, my bad. Sorry, babe.
But my real problem with John Edwards is that he does cold reading. Now, this is something that it has been constantly used by people, let's call them charlatans, just so we sound fancy. But this has been constantly used by people who want to make money. And that's exactly what John Edwards did. He made a whole bunch of money by doing a cold reading. Do you know what I'm talking about when I talk about cold reading?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so yeah. So basically, cold reading is when you walk into a room and you look at your audience and you start with just broad generalizations that you gently stroke down to a precise person who has in their head what they want to hear, and you're able to actually tell them what they want to hear. So, for example, he would go into a room and he'd be like, okay, I'm getting a feeling from a dead person. And he would look around and see if somebody was reacting. And he's like, and their name began with an M. And he would wait to see who would react to that. And then he's like, okay, let's focus on their name. Let's go with maybe I'm getting a male figure. And he would wait to see who reacted to that. And he was like, okay, now I'm, and et cetera, until he found that one person in the audience who was biting hook, line, and sinker into whatever bullshit he was going to say. I mean, ultimately, that's the reason that John Edwards no longer has a show, was because he was kind of debunked. And maybe he had some psychic abilities, but all the evidence points to him not.
Right.
All right, who else you got?
James Van Praagh. James Van Praagh considered himself a clairvoyant and medium. He is also celebrated worldwide as a gifted and important spiritual teacher. After many self-described spiritual encounters as a child, James Van Praagh didn't truly understand his own abilities until he was a young adult.
But see, I don't know. I'm sorry. I have my skepticism. My skepticism antennae are at 11 right now. But keep going.
After a significant encounter with another medium, James Van Praagh began to explore his own abilities. A made-for-TV movie titled Talking with the Dead tells the story of his life as a medium. He also contributed to Ghost Whisperer, a television show based on his own experiences.
I remember the Ghost Whisperer show.
Yes.
And I think I remember the movie, but that was I think it was in the early 90s. So I was young. I was impressionable. But as I've gotten older, he doesn't really do the trick.
Doesn't do it for you?
He doesn't pass the smell test.
Well, let's try Sally Morgan.
Okay. I've heard the name.
Yes.
but like, no, like I've really heard the name. Who the hell is Sally Morgan?
She's most famous as Princess Diana's psychic.
That's right.
Yes. Sally Morgan is one of the world's best known and most respected mediums and psychics. Descended from the witch of Fulham, Sally Morgan always believed that she inherited her psychic abilities.
The Witch of Fulham.
Yes.
Let me just jot that one down because that could be something.
You want me to spell the name for you?
Sure.
Fulham.
Well, that's what I had written before you spelled it, but
okay. Well, Sally Morgan describes a lifetime of spiritual abilities starting in early childhood. In her early 20s, she began to casually offer her services to friends and family, and soon her career took off. Eventually, her client list was filled with celebrities and royalty. Today, she is a best-selling author and has a very successful television and theater career.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's just like it's John Edwards, UK.
Yes, basically.
So, what else you got?
Uri Geller.
Oh, yeah.
Uri Geller is famous as the man who can bend spoons with his mind.
What a valuable psychic phenomena that is.
I want a bent spoon. That sounds cool.
Yeah, but I mean, like, I don't know. Is the greater implication that he's like, I could snap your neck just like this spoon?
That's
Can you
creepy.
imagine Uri Geller as like an action hero? And he just like goes around and he's like maybe bending people's guns as they're trying to shoot at him.
Wow.
Or like bends them around so that they shoot themselves in a cartoonish fashion.
That's freaky, man.
But off topic. I'm sorry. That's just my mind works in mysterious ways.
Yes. While his feats are memorable, his psychic abilities aren't without controversy. Uri Geller claims he received his supernatural powers from extraterrestrials. I can't help but giggle when I read that part.
Yeah. Well, it always makes me think of the extra testicle. So, yeah.
Oh, you're so weird.
I know.
While he has many skeptics, he also has submitted himself to research conducted by such prestigious institutions as Stanford and even the CIA.
Ooh.
Both institutions have revealed that Uri Geller does in fact possess some supernatural abilities. Though his skeptics persist, so does his fame. Uri Geller has been highly successful on TV as the author of best-selling books and in live shows.
Honestly, I mean, look at these two assholes that know that he's like bend spoons.
He could bend spoons!
But as far as the CIA is concerned, we're definitely going to have to talk about someday, like, the men who stare at goats. Like, I mean, it was a Coen Brothers movie, but it was actually like a CIA Black Book project where they employed psychics to try and figure out a way to win, like, I think it was like the Vietnam War.
Huh.
But that's for another time.
Yes.
Who else you got?
Michelle White Dove.
I have no idea who this is.
Michelle White Dove is most famous for her ability to provide accurate psychic readings in front of a live audience. In fact, this skill has led to her being named America's #1 psychic by Lifetime Television.
Television for women.
Michelle.
That's why John Edwards wasn't there.
You're gonna make me cough. I've been doing good.
You're okay.
Michelle.
Again, your cold will subside.
I know.
Promise you.
Don't make me cough.
Okay.
Michelle spends her time appearing on numerous television shows. Oh, shoot. I lost my spot. So, causing her abilities. As she has chosen this venue on her main outreach, it's impressive that she continues to amaze audiences with her uncanny but completely accurate readings.
Well, yeah, I kind of doubt the accuracy of the readings. I mean, like, it
Says she's world's #1 psychic.
well, yeah, but they also said John Edwards is the world #1 psychic. But John Edwards is a dude, so Lifetime wasn't interested, and that's sexism right there. But ultimately, I think that I don't know. It's just psychics for money. It's like they have all of these abilities. For one, couldn't they just fucking use their powers and win the lottery? Or couldn't they just I don't know, just make people's minds explode like in scanners?
I don't know.
I don't know either. Who else you got?
I got Chip Coffee.
Oh, I know this fella. Well, I don't know him personally, but I've heard of him.
Chip Coffee has battled skeptics for much of his career. His doubters, however, never get him down. He has continued to share his gift wildly focusing not only on readings and connections with apparitions, but also on educating the wider public. Chip Coffey produced Psychic Kids, Children of the Paranormal, a groundbreaking 1-hour pilot followed by 3 successful seasons of the show.
Well, that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
It's like not only adults have this, but we also have.
Well, most of these psychics talk about starting as kids. Yeah. All of them. They all talk about having their gifts start when they're young.
Right. Now he only has to wait like 20 minutes or 20 years, and he'll have another show.
Well, he also wrote Growing Up Psychic, which was published by Random House in 2012. Despite his difficulties with certain characters over the years, he has stayed the course and has consequently enjoyed a prolific career. Have anything else to say?
No, not so much. But again, from what I know of Chip Coffey, is that he has established himself not just as the producer of a show about psychic kids, but he had done other things in his life, so he was pretty well financially. He was financially okay, and that's that. I don't know. That's a big hinge for me. I don't give much stock to these psychics who just prey on people. The John Edwards makes me fucking he just makes me insane because it's been proven that he's just doing these cold readings and he's just preying on people who are searching for something else. They're looking for some sort of solace, and maybe in his own mind he justifies that because he's able to talk these people through their own problems with people that have passed in their life.
Right.
But I just don't. I don't know. There's just something that just seems icky about it to me. But I digress. Let's go. Oh, okay. Let's go to your favorite psychic.
Yes, please.
It's gotta be your favorite psychic.
Absolutely.
We've been watching the show for the last week, even though we were talking about any other topic under the sun in the paranormal, but we have been watching the show Medium. So let's go, baby.
Alison Dubois.
Here we go.
When her powers were tested as a medium by Gary Schwartz of the University of Arizona, Schwartz claimed that his research supports Dubois' psychic abilities. While skeptics have pointed out flaws in both Dubois' claims and Schwartz's research, a show called Medium is based on Allison's experiences, and she is a consultant for the show. She claims she has visions of both the past and the future, but unlike the show, the real Dubois has visions in her waking life. She doesn't dream of events that happen. She is able to see things while awake.
Right. I mean, like she's a real interesting character because again, I always have my skeptic hackles get raised when people are profiting off of their gift, because if it's a gift to them, then they should give it back freely to the world, because even if you're a psychic, you can still bang a hammer. I don't know. That's just a poor example.
I agree with you, but I still love her and believe in her.
Right. And there have been many miraculous things that she's done. But I don't know. I'm super skeptical, except for the last guy that I'm going to talk about. But
well, Dubois refers to herself as a medium and a profiler rather than a psychic because of the negative connotation she feels is associated with the term psychic. She claims that she became aware that she had the ability to communicate with the departed souls when she was 6 years old. See, so young. They all talk about so young. Dubois claims she uses these abilities to connect with deceased loved ones.
I mean, how could a 6-year-old even conceptualize? Anyway,
yeah, it also helps law enforcement agencies solve crimes, such as the Texas Rangers and the Glendale, Arizona Police Department, and she uses these abilities as a jury consultant.
Right, when she worked, because she did work for the district attorney's office in Glendale, Arizona.
Right. These law enforcement agencies have since either denied any such cooperation happened or stated that the tips provided by Dubois were not helpful. Those fuckers.
Right, but I mean, honestly, they had to kind of do that from a legal standpoint, because then it becomes like a he said, she said kind of argument.
Right.
Where they can't say, well, she said that you did this and she sees all sorts of crazy shit, so you're guilty. So they have to sort of distance themselves, right. But she did in fact help with investigations.
Right. Absolutely. According to TV Guide interviews, Allison Dubois spent 4 years participating in various tests of the University of Arizona to assist with their studies of medium and psychic phenomena. Gary Schwartz, director of the Veritas, read that for me, Gavin.
Veritas
Research Project
Veritas
claims that Dubois has psychic abilities, arguing in the March 6, 2005 TV Guide. Anyone who's looked closely at the evidence can't help but come to the conclusion that there is something very real going on here.
Right. Well, and that's sort of the hinge of this whole thing, is that it's there's all this, there is evidence, but is it scientifically provable? Meaning that in order for something to be scientifically provable, it has to be repeatable.
Right.
And that therein lies the hole, because it can't always be repeated, but it doesn't it doesn't really deny the proof of concept, I guess you would call it.
Mm-hmm. At their first meeting, Schwartz says Dubois accurately described a friend of Schwartz who had just died. Impressed, Schwartz conducted a series of interviews, including one in which Dubois stated she contacted the late husband of a woman in England, knowing only the woman's name. The woman, after reading a transcript of the session, affirmed that 80% of what Dubois said was accurate. That's amazing.
It certainly is. I mean, like, to jump across the pond inside of your mind when she lives in Glendale, Arizona, that she was able to read the feelings of this woman's husband.
Right.
I'm trying to be careful with my wording.
No worries, honey. Schwartz published his research in a book titled The Truth About Medium According to a Statement by Dubois. She does not endorse the book of Schwartz, describing it as a prostitution of her gifts.
Well, yeah, because, like, she signed up for the study and didn't realize that she was going to be the subject of a book. I mean, she kind of just thought that he was just curious about it, like maybe a paper, but not a book.
Right.
Because as we've found out when we're writing a book, you tend to bastardize some of the information just so that it fleshes out the material. So I don't know this book, but if she was not a big fan of it, he probably fibbed on a couple of things.
I agree.
All right, so we've talked about your favorite psychic.
Yes.
So here's my favorite psychic. And this one I did a really deep dive, so you're going to have to forgive me, but here we go. This is Edgar Casey. He was a clairvoyant whom had little idea of the prophetic readings of what he said. This was because the visions, prophecies, and advice that came from him all came to him while he was asleep. He would talk in his sleep. And
wow.
Yeah, and he would have these amazing visions. So this gave him the moniker of the sleeping prophet. Dun dun dun.
Ooh.
His early life was a simple one. He was a child in a family of 6 children, lived on a farm near Hopkinsville, Kentucky. He claimed that when he was young, he was able to see spirits, which he called little people. They would hop around, he would play with them, but if he looked at them really closely, he could see right through them. And on occasion, he would see his dead grandpa.
Creepy.
Not one for schooling. He had a lot of struggles in school. He did, however, love church. And from age 10 to 12, he read the Bible over a dozen times. In May 1889, not 1989, sorry, reading the Bible in the woods near his family farm, he had a vision. He would tell this story until the day he died. He claims he saw a woman with wings that told him his prayers were answered and asked him what he wanted most of all. Always humble, but definitely frightened, in a chattering voice, he said he wanted to help people. sick children especially. The next day, Edward came home with a note from his teacher describing a poor performance on a spelling test, and that this was a continuing problem. He was not a scholar. His father tested Casey and confirmed that Edgar was in fact a terrible speller. And again, you have to put this into the times. We're still in the 1800s.
Right.
Okay.
Gotcha.
All right. So don't be too shocked.
I won't.
All right.
I won't.
Edgar's father slapped him so hard that he knocked him out of the chair.
Oh.
Because he wasn't a good speller.
Oh, that is so messed up.
Okay. Well, here's where it gets kind of interesting. At this point, on the floor, he hears a voice. The same voice that he heard from the woman with wings in the woods. She said that if he slept, I put this in quotes, could help him. He got back into his chair, placed his head on his spelling book, and fell asleep. A short while later, his father shook him awake. Casey claims that he knew all of his spellings. His father tested him again, and Edgar nailed every spelling. Not only the words that he had been quizzed on previously, but almost every word in the book.
Wow.
And his father smacked him again.
What?
This time for possibly playing some sort of trick on him.
What the heck?
Casey continued the practice of laying his head down on the school books, taking a nap, and miraculously knew the text forward and backward. He became a top student in his class and made his father proud, but began to be alienated from his peers because of his newfound academic prowess. He didn't have to study, he just had to fall asleep on top of the book. So, naturally, other kids were a little jealous. After that, Casey developed the ability to diagnose in his sleep. He was struck in the head by a ball and started acting a little strange. When he got home from school, he passed out and began to speak. He apparently began mumbling, but then speaking more clearly, he began to talk about the blow to the head and gave his worried family a recipe for a poultice, basically medicated compress that treats ailments. They did as instructed by the sleeping boy, and as miraculous as the absorption of knowledge from the books, Casey was cured. Though this ability would not appear again until several years later, I couldn't let this go by without mention. In 1893, the Casey family moved to Hopkinsville. It was common at the time, as was common at the time, Casey left school in the 9th grade in search of employment to help the family make ends meet, to earn enough to start a family of his own. In 1897, he met and then shortly thereafter asked Gertrude Evans to marry him. She accepted, and after a long engagement, they married in 1903. But there was a lot that happened in between that time. In 1900, Casey and his father started the Woodman of the World Insurance. Shortly thereafter, he contracted a case of severe laryngitis. Unable to raise his voice above a whisper, he would be of little help trying to push insurance. He took an interest in photography and began an apprenticeship at a photography studio. Less talking, still able to make money for himself and his fiancée. In 1901, a traveling hypnotist found Casey and claimed that he would be able to bring back Edgar's voice. The possibility tempted Casey, and he agreed to go under hypnosis and allow the hypnotist, known only as, and I seriously looked for this one, he was known as the Laugh Man Hart.
What?
Yeah, that's all I could find.
Weird.
So, the Laugh Man Hart, which really just calls to mind Bret the Hitman Hart from the WWF growing up. Anyway, Hart puts Casey under. He begins to speak in his normal voice, but when he awoke, he was only to speak again in a whisper. It had worked, but only for a moment. Now, there was a different hypnotist that was local to the town, because Hart was a part of a traveling show. So Hart leaves, and Edgar Casey just knows now that he can speak, but only under hypnosis. So he finds Albert Al Lane. Now, Lane basically said, okay, you are kind of known for being able to just heal things or come up with cures for things when you're asleep. So how about I put you to sleep, I'll ask you a couple of questions, you can tell me what's wrong with you, and we'll figure out how to fix it. So, again, very religious. Casey just agrees to do this experiment. As he goes under, Casey describes his ailment, and using the royal we instead of I, as he would throughout the rest of his readings, Casey's diagnosis was psychological paralysis of his vocal cords, which could be cured by increasing the blood flow to the vocal cords. Upon waking up, Casey's neck became red and inflamed. But a little while later, his voice returned. He had physically caused more blood flow to his vocal cords, just as the diagnosis that he made had prescribed. Now, Lane had heard of similar hypnotic cures by a very French-sounding hypnotist whose name I don't even want to try and pronounce. But he was a student of Franz Mesmer. That one I got, because I'd heard of him before. He was a German doctor whose namesake is attributed to the mass hypnosis known as mesmerization. With stars in his eyes, Lane convinced Casey to explore his powers further, to be able to take a quick cat nap and find a cure for whatever ailment was afflicting an individual could be quite lucrative. Still a pious man, Casey says, nah. If he's gonna do this, He doesn't want to make any money from it. Because so far as he was concerned, he had seen an angel who gave him powers, and he shouldn't use those powers to profit.
I admire that.
Yep. So he didn't fully understand how it worked. Hell, he didn't even know what he was saying while entranced. That was the kicker, is that he didn't remember any of the things that he said. All he knew was laid his head down, closed his eyes, went to sleep, started talking. Someone or something was speaking through him. And the results were nothing short of miraculous. But knowing that everything comes at a price, the biblical eye for an eye, he would not or could not accept any money for his services. As he had told the wing woman from his youth, he wanted to help people. To charge people for this service was just wrong. Because one dead patient was all that was needed to make him a murderer. In his own estimation.
Jeez.
In 1902, Casey worked in a bookstore in Bowling Green, Kentucky. He was still giving readings, still refused any money. He was living in the house with 2 doctors who approved, but were still astonished by Casey's diagnoses and treatments. He still refused payments for his readings and continued as a photographer, opening 2 separate studios, both of which burned down in 1906 and 1907, which threw him into bankruptcy. But, a hard worker always, by 1909, he crawled out from his mountain of debt. Though still very much broke, he still refused to take a penny from his readings. Oh shoot, I lost my place. Hang on.
Oh no. Shall I sing a song? I'm just kidding, I don't sing.
Please don't.
Where are we, Gavin?
I know. This is killing me. God damn it.
Did you find it?
I did.
Oh, good. Please continue.
So, married Gertrude, 1903. Gertrude fell ill in the early 1910s, contracting tuberculosis, a particularly fatal condition at the time. Casey again fell asleep and spoke about a cure for his beloved. The cure worked, and Gertrude lived, never having any other problems with tuberculosis.
That's amazing.
That's pretty goddamn amazing. I really wish I could find some more on that, because shit, Doc Holliday would still be alive.
I want to be cured.
In 1912, Casey moved to Selma, Georgia. He was now a known psychic healer, and his renown grew from newspaper articles, and so did the demand for his products, talents. He invented a card game called Pit. It was loosely based around loosely based around the wheat market, which sounds so goddamn boring, but the game is still sold today. And he sold it to help finance his not-for-profit psychic healing. He hired a hypnotist to put him under and a secretary to record his diagnosis and prescription. He continued this practice, but was starting to feel the weight of his gift. As his body aged, it seemed that the readings were beginning to take a physical toll. He woke from his psychic naps, quote unquote, more tired than when he went down. In 1923, Arthur Lammers, I don't know, hard to pronounce, and who knows with names.
Just keep going.
Okay. Arthur Lammers, a student of metaphysics and a wealthy businessman from printing mostly, heard tell of a man who was able to channel spirits in his sleep. Lammers found Casey and proposed that he use his gifts to investigate the metaphysical concepts of reincarnation and astronomy. Again, Casey's hackles raised. Reluctantly, he agreed to a reading. He believed in the Bible, and these concepts seemed outside of the world. Outside of the word. So basically, reincarnation and astrology were just not biblical things. And he considered himself, again, a pious man. But Casey's stenographer allegedly recorded the following. In this, we see the plan of development of those individuals set upon the plane, meaning the ability to enter again into the presence of the Creator and become a full part of that creation. Insofar as this entity is concerned, this is the third appearance on this plane, and before this one, as a monk. We see glimpses in the life of the entity now as we're shown in the monk. In this mode of living, the body is only the vehicle ever of that spirit and soul that waft through all times and ever remain the same. Casey couldn't even believe that he said this. But again, while he was asleep, Casey wasn't really there. So, a little dubious, Lammers had to convince Casey that this prophecy, at the very least, opened the door to the possibility of reincarnation and the metaphysical. As time progressed, Casey and Lemire established the beginnings of the Association for Research and Enlightenment and began to catalog Casey's readings. As they continued, Casey still held on to his beliefs as a Christian, but also became convinced that the teachings of the Bible were not mutually exclusive to the metaphysical philosophies. In 1925, Casey again heard the voice of the winged woman. This time, she instructed him to leave Georgia and relocate to Virginia Beach, where the sands crystals would have curative properties to promote rapid healing. Weary from his readings, he was all too ready to accept this piece of advice. Casey, by this time, had began to monetize his predictions. He began to manufacture remedies based off of his readings and began to build research centers to aid in this effort. His readings began to suggest healthcare through holistic means, mostly eating right and exercise, The grassroots of many diet and exercise fads that exist today came from Edgar Cayce. All culminates in the final founding of the Association for Research and Enlightenment, the ARE. Though most of us don't follow any of the doctrines that Edgar Cayce, he did leave his mark on the world and did help a lot of people. His greatest desire from the first time he saw the winged woman as a child. Inexplicable and most definitely paranormal. In conclusion, psychics are a decidedly paranormal subject. Many claim to have these abilities, and there are just as many who dispute their claims. For any legitimate psychic, there is a debunker waiting in the wings to take the wind out of their sails. There is no scientific proof, but still a preponderance of evidence. And if that ain't a kick in the sack, I don't know what is. And if you're listening and liking any of this nonsense that we've been throwing our way, please let us know. We're on Facebook as Two Nuts in the Sack, spaces included. We're also on YouTube, but on YouTube, you leave the spaces out. It's still Two Nuts in the Sack, but it's all one word. So drop a comment, leave a thumbs up or a thumbs down. We don't just do this for ourselves. We hope that we're doing it for you too. So, for Two Nuts in the Sack, signing off.